Hi, this is Joe again with another review. For the sake of this video, I'm going to be discussing the HBO documentary, or sort of HBO special, which re-aired on PBS, which is of course the 50th anniversary of Sesame Street celebration. And it was hosted by the actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I mean, of all people to pick, why did they pick him? I have no idea. But that's one issue I had. But I'm going to do the actual review of the actual show, which of course, for Sesame Street is of course the longest running children's show ever. I mean, you could say maybe Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, because it started like about 4 or 5 years earlier. But since Mr. Rogers passed away some years ago, you don't have obviously don't have any new episodes because Mr. Rogers passed away. But Sesame Street is still the longest continually running children's television show of all time, and probably the most famous and the most influential, and the whole boatload of children's shows that came on after that, like Magic Gone here in New York, Romper Room. I think Romper Room was on before Sesame Street, but that also ended. Or like Great Space Coaster that came on in the 80s, and a whole bunch of other children's shows that came on after that, but unfortunately some of them received cult status, but no longer running brand new episodes like Sesame Street has been. But with the special itself, it mostly focused on some of the most famous songs. It had mostly to do with most famous songs in Sesame Street than showing actual clips. It did show It did show a couple of clips, but it was mostly had to do with the songs, and had more performing some of the songs. The only difference. The thing was that you had all the classics, or the so-called classic Sesame Street songs. Like, one of these things in this picture does not look like the others. You did that one. Or, These Are the People in Your Neighborhood song. The other classic song they performed was Sing a Song. Sing a song, and sing out loud, and that song. And of course, the other song was actually performed by Kermit the Frog and I think Elvis Costello. Because one of the famous ones is Not That Easy Being Green. I mean, they focused on those songs, but unfortunately, the problem is that they had the host, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he did skits with some of the Muppet characters that went way too long and was totally unnecessary. I mean, if they really want to do a proper tribute to Sesame Street for being on the air for 50 years, I felt that they should have done a show showing the greatest moments in Sesame Street history over the 50 years. But of course, the problem is that most of the big moments in Sesame Street history took place before this generation of kids who currently watch Sesame Street today won't relate to, unfortunately. And so that's what I'm going to do in this video, talk about my favorite moments of Sesame Street and discuss them for you. Of course, I'm also going the songs that were mentioned on here was great, but the problem is that they shorten it down, the songs. Instead of playing the full song, except for It's Not Easy Being Green, they cut down the songs a lot. Of course, the problem is that you had Joseph Gordon-Levitt hosting it. The people who should have hosted the special were, of course, the people who actually do star on Sesame Street, which do make an appearance on the show, but not that much. I mean, it's great to see some of the cast members that I grew up watching on the show. Of course, unfortunately, there's about at least 3 cast members that I grew up with are no longer alive. They passed away. Who was on this show, and they should have brought this up on the special. I guess maybe because they don't want to bring the kids down, depress the kids, or dramatize them. Of course, the first one who passed away back in 1982 was that I know I mentioned, I forgot the guy's real name, but the person who played Mr. Hooper. He passed away in 1982. And I think it was in May 1982. It wasn't until Thanksgiving in 1982 when the episode actually aired, saying, announcing the world that Mr. Hooper had died, which one I think is the best moment in Sesame Street history, which we're going to get into a little bit later. Of course, and the other two who passed away, the one was David on the show, was the black actor who took over Mr. Hooper's store when Mr. Hooper passed away. He died of a heart attack, and the one who was Olivia, who played Olivia, who was Gordon's sister on Sesame Street, she also had died. And if you want to see who she also starred on the Marla Gibbs sitcom 227. She played her best friend on that show. So she actually left Sesame Street to star in 227 in the 80s. But also there was controversy with Sesame Street lately, because the guy who played Bob McGrath, who plays Bob on Sesame Street, he was fired from being on Sesame Street because he was, quote, too old. Because I think it was about 80 years old. If it's not over 80 years old, he's damn close to being 80. He was fired, and then there was such a backlash for it, they brought him back because he actually was trying to sue him because they fired him wrongly. And the other one who left, I think two other actors who left, Luis, who worked in the fiction shop, and who married Maria on the show back in 1980, which is also one of the other big moments. I think he left the show, but it's nice that they brought him back on. And of course Maria, who was just mentioned, who since retired from Sesame Street, they brought her back on, as well as Linda, who was a deaf woman on the show. They brought her back on, and it's great to see those actors that I grew up with back on the show. I think Susan and Gordon are still the only ones who originally on the show were still there, and they were on the show too. I think mostly the younger stars are on the show now. Because Susan and Gordon are the only two original actors who came back on the special, and they did a little singing a couple of the songs at the beginning of the special and at the end. They had a big group photograph at the end of the show. But I felt in the special they should have more interaction. The people who should have hosted were the ones who, like Susan and Gordon, who were the original stars of Sesame Street, to host and to do a thing with the famous moments or how they got cast on the show, and do an actual sit-down interview and talk about the memories of being on Sesame Street or their favorite moments of the show. I feel that's what they should have done. Susan and Gordon, I think also Bob, are the original actors who starred in the show for the 50 years. They should have had the three of them on there, and along with Maria, Luis, and Linda, have them on and discuss it, because they've been on the show like the longest, and they have some great memories. And that's when the show was at its best, was in the 70s and early 80s. Is when the show was the best, and that's when they should have. That's what they should have done with the 50th anniversary show, and not have all these shenanigans going on with George McGovern, and they had the Sesame Street sign was missing, so you had Grover, as a Super Grover character, looking for the sign, and you had Elmo, Abacadabby, and Juanita looking for the show, and they even had the newer Muppet who has autism, her doing something, and it's like they're forgetting some of the older characters, and which is ridiculous, because they want to relate. They want to have some 70 or 80-year-old person telling them how to read or do the alphabet or sing a song. They don't want them. They want the younger, under 40 crowd performing for them on the special, which is just not right. Cutting the old folks out, the ones who made Sesame Street special. Cut them out and have all these younger people who, actually, my age, I know who the hell these people are. I know who Maria is. I know Luis, Gordon, Susan, Linda, and Bob. I know them. And to cut all of them out and just have it run for maybe it felt like 5 seconds, and not have any interaction with anybody. And they have that's the younger crowd on there, with the newer Muppets, or should I say, the more popular Muppets of today, do the show, which is not, to me, it's not right. I mean, it's the wrong way of doing it. But the Muppets that I grew up with, they had like short cameos, like Guy Smiley, who used to do like the game show parodies on Sesame Street, on there, and also Don Music, who was like this strung out. Well, he wasn't a drunk or drug addict, but he used to write all the songs. He used to be crazy here and stuff. There used to be this one Muppet who was crazy, or really demented character. Forgot his name. Forgot that character's name, but I had him. For a second, you had Sherlock Hemlock, who's probably like his private detective there. You also had the guy named Lefty. He said, "Hey, I got an S for you. You have a letter or a number to give to another character. Hey, you want the number 4? I got number 4 right here. They had a segment on that character, the Lefty character. There was also, they had Harry Monster. He was playing in a band for the special, and he was, another one of the popular Muppets when I was a kid, watching Sesame Street. But unfortunately, they didn't put him in that much. And also, there was a segment of 2 characters, such a guy like Harry and Biff or something, and they had them on for like 2 seconds at the end of the show, which isn't right. I mean, they should bring back some of the older Muppets and say, hey, these are the Muppets who were on the show originally and throughout the 70s and stuff, or in the early 80s. They had them on. They had Telly Master. They did more with Telly Master than any of the other Muppets that I grew up with. And of course, I should mention, I also show some of the old clips. One of the most things that became famous for Sesame Street was, of course, the animated features. The animated cartoons, which wasn't very long, maybe not even 5 minutes. And the only one they showed was the one with a little black girl going to the supermarket for a mother. And nowadays, that cartoon will be ripped to shreds by liberal media, because the little girl's going out to the supermarket by herself without a mother, or an aunt or a grandmother or something. And she goes, remember, honey, pick up a gallon, a quart of milk, a stick of butter, right? And I forgot the other. There was like three items: a quart of milk, a loaf of bread, and a stick of butter. Remember that? And she goes, I'm glad I did it by myself. I'm glad I didn't remember. I remembered everything when my mommy wanted. And that's the only anime thing they showed. Meanwhile, they had cartoon or animated features that scared the crap out of me. And it's on YouTube. Like, what if the mouse and the mouse and the elephant? What if the mouse and the elephant switches bodies and stuff? And that stuff creeped me out. Or the turtle and the dog or something. Those videos really creeped me out. And that stuff they didn't show in the special at all, because you only have like just under an hour. So you couldn't show everything. But they show that. They show something from Christmas Eve with Sesame Street, which I previously, a few years ago, I did a review on that, and they didn't even mention that special at all. Not at all. Or none of the other, Elmo Saves Christmas, they didn't even mention that either, which is a disgrace. But some of the greatest moments that I feel, I should mention this before I show off the video, some of the greatest moments I feel in Sesame Street history. Of course, like number 1 is the death of, which I mentioned earlier, the death of Mr. Hooper. Because like I said, he died in May 1982, or passed away. And so they filmed an episode as a tribute episode to Mr. Hooper, where they had all the cast members, all the adults, explaining to Big Bird about death. And what happened was, I explained it, so when you passed away, remember we told you that Mr. Hooper died? And I said, yeah. And I said, well, when a person dies, they never come back. And Big Bird quivers and he says, never? They're never ever coming back? And he says, no, Big Bird, they're never coming back. He said, ever? And that was the most moving moment ever in Sesame Street history. Unfortunately, I never saw the episode because, like, a couple years earlier, I already stopped watching Sesame Street. I was like 11 years old already, so I was too old to watch Sesame Street by then. And so I started watching the show, and that's when they had announced that Mr. Hooper had died, and they had the episode actually aired it on Thanksgiving. So the family would be home. Actually, most people would be off for Thanksgiving, spending time with the family. And when the episode airs, families could explain to the kids what death is. Of course, one of the other big moments in Sesame Street history is, of course, what happened in 1985. What happened in 1985 was, of course, one of the longest running gags. I think that gag ran for about 14, 15 years. Was Snuffleupagus. Of course, or Snuffy for short. He was Big Bird's best friend, and what happened was, they used to have pretty long segments with Snuffy, Snuffleupagus, and Big Bird. It was one of the more popular segments on the show, in the 70s, when it was, a kid watching Sesame Street, but the adults on the show never believed the Snuffleupagus existed. They go, oh, there's no such thing as Snuffleupagus, as a Snuffleupagus, there's no such thing. You make it Big Bird, you're making this up. Pretty much calling Big Bird a liar, right? For the most part, and telling him they said, oh, he's just your make believe friend, or like invisible friend, like little kids would have at that age. There were kids who, Sesame Street age, would have an invisible friend. I never did, but they had an invisible friend, and that's what Snuffleupagus was to Big Bird, according to in the adults' eyes, because they never saw Snuffy. Because one of the gags is when Snuffy would be in Big Bird's nest, Big Bird would get one of the adults, like Gwen or Susan or Bob or Linda or somebody, or Maria or Luis, one of the adults that was on the show at the time, and then everything. I thought, I'm going to get Mr. Hooper, and he will see you. And for some reason, Snuffy will leave. And what would happen is, when he would leave, that's when Big Bird would come back with one of the adults and say, hey, he's gone. So they kept up the running gag. I guess that people got so disgusted, or parents who watched the show with their kids, who grew up and now they have their own kids, found that it was disgusting that they kept doing this to poor Big Bird, and they kept saying the Snuffy isn't real and stuff. And so in 1985, they finally had a storyline where the adults finally saw Snuffy, and I think that clip is also on YouTube. And a lot of the Sesame Street clips are now on YouTube, especially the older stuff. And they finally saw him, and that was a great moment. And they finally saw him, and so I didn't realize. And then I happened to turn on Sesame Street one day, like years later, after that moment, and we saw the adults interacting with Snuffy. Say, hey, when did they find out they saw Snuffleupagus? And then, of course, to measure YouTube, I was able to see that clip, and it was great. And of course, the other moment for me is, of course, when Maria and Luis got married on the show, because it was the only time that I know of in Sesame Street history where two of the adults actually got married. And I think the reason for that is that Maria, I think, was married in real life, and she was pregnant at the time. So what there was, the guy explained her pregnancy, or her being fat from her pregnancy. So they wrote the storyline in that she was getting married to Luis, and of course they would have a child on the show, which I think they eventually wrote the storyline in her pregnancy into the show to explain the creation of life. But that was, to me, that was like the three big moments: Snuffleupagus, Maria and Luis getting married, and of course the death of Mr. Hooper. The problem is, with the 50th anniversary celebration, they didn't put those shows in, moments in. I thought they should have had the big moments stuff. One thing they did put in was the bit where the aliens would go yep. They did those. They show a clip of that, and that was a problem that was annoying to me. They took some of the classic bits that would go over and explain what near and far is. and they put Joseph Gordon-Levitt into those clips. I should also mention that the reveal of Snuffleupagus to the adults, they also put Joseph Gordon-Levitt in that classic clip. It's kind of like what they did with Forrest Gump. When they put Forrest Gump or Tom Hanks in the classic moments in history, that's what they did with Joseph Gordon-Levitt with famous clips of Sesame Street, and that became annoying. All the Joseph Gordon-Levitt stuff was annoying, and that's why, it was good for what it is, but it could have been better. If they had the original cast members, at least they had Gordon, Susan, and Bob telling their history, or the favorite memories of Sesame Street, and count down the top, maybe do like a top 50 list of the greatest moments in Sesame Street history. If they did something like that, and maybe interact with some of the older Muppets that they don't even use anymore, if they did that, then I think the 50th anniversary show would have been better. I know I ran a little bit long, but that's my opinion and stuff. So that's my review of the 50th anniversary celebration of Sesame Street. Please click on the video, please rate it, please subscribe to my channel, please forward this video on your Facebook pages. You can check out all my reviews on my YouTube channel at RowdyC.com, that's all WDY, and C.com. There's a homepage to the Rowdy Reviewer, Chris Lee Moore, and please check out all of his videos on his website. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.